Coming up next on Meet the Farmer TV.
My father used to ask me, he'd say, boy, he'd say, what do you want out of this life? And I'd think for a second, I'd say, well, Dad, I'll tell you what. I said, I'd like to be able to sell a tomato for over $2 a pound. And I would love to plow a piece of flat ground and have no rocks in it. And he thought for a second, he said, you'll probably live long enough to sell a $2 a pound tomato. He said, but you ain't never gonna plow a piece of flat ground that ain't got any rocks in it. And it's the truth.
Today on Meet the Farmer TV, fresh produce at the White House Farmers Market.
This program is a production of Meet the Farmer TV, LLC, in association with Planet Earth Diversified, Nelly Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design.
I'm Michael Clark, your host for Meet the Farmer TV. Today we're coming to D.C. to find out the 9th of Fresh Farm Markets, Farmers Markets, held right across from the White House here on the other side of the park at Vermont and H.
My name is Jim Hewitt. I'm the farmer, the owner of Sunnyside Farm and Orchard, and you're watching Meet the Farmer TV right outside the White House in Washington, D.C. at the new White House Farmers Market. This is the third day. So far it's showing pretty good promise. The people are really glad to be here, glad we're here. We're glad to be here. It's quite a crowd.
So they're telling you you need USDA in order to bring it from West Virginia here to the district?
No, everybody is ignoring it because none of the vendors in this market have USDA.
I don't, you know, when our VDAX inspector came out, he said, yeah, they pay us to come and do the USDA inspection. So like once you're satisfied with us, then then we just come back and do another form.
Because
so it might be that
in West Virginia, you can't have a home kitchen. They have no way of inspecting home kitchens. Only
the state doesn't have a way of doing it.
No.
Maybe that's why
in Virginia, you can have a home kitchen.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania, they can have home kitchens. In Maryland, but West Virginia,
they don't have a rule for it. Well, that's interesting. Maybe we need to go to the legislature and say you need a home kitchen rule.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, we actually had to put a separate kitchen in away from the home.
Well, now, see, that's what I had to do.
We did it in the bottom of the barn. We renovated area. It's an old dairy barn. So we took this concrete area and sealed it off and sealed the floors.
Well, the county, I mean, for me to do it under the county regulations, it was going to be horrendous. It's like I've got the federal processing license. I forget what they call it.
Oh, my goodness.
But I got that.
That's like your Campbell Soup or something.
Right. I go to work for Dairy Mate, Campbell Soup, anybody.
Wow.
And but they wanted me to go do the local safe serve.
Right.
And I said,
serve safe.
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
You know, not if I got a federal license to process.
Yeah. Why do I need that?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm not running a restaurant.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know, if you have a restaurant kitchen in Virginia, you can't make pesto.
Right.
You can serve the pesto in the restaurant, but you can't bring it out here and sell. You got to have a VDAX inspected kitchen. So they're two different inspections. Yeah. Well, now you had told Frank earlier about in Pennsylvania they had markets at the
They used
rest
to have
stops?
the farmers markets. There were several of the restaurants on our rest stops on the PA Turnpike. And they had farmers markets and set up for people on Turnpike.
Wow.
And we still get letters from some of the different areas, like Philadelphia and some of the Pennsylvania places that want to know if we'd be interested in doing farmers markets. I haven't heard anything from them in the past couple of years, so I don't know. I know they tried it, whether it failed or whether it worked or not, I don't know.
Well, now in Virginia, they're closing the rest stops because they don't have any money. Yeah. And we proposed that, and the governor was like, well, we got a federal restriction that prevents us from doing that. So we're going to try to find out if the USDA will give them an exemption.
You know, and I don't know about that. You know, a lot of that, if they don't want to do it, they use the federal restrictions, and they say, well, we use federal money to help build the road, therefore we fall under.
Right.
But I don't think there's a federal rule on, well, if there was, see, they can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
if it's a federal rule that they control what's in the rest area, then they would have to have been closed federally. How can you use the state authority to close the rest area if the federal authority has control over it? If the federal authority doesn't have control over it, then you can't use them as an excuse to not do something there. See what I'm saying?
Sounds like we need to send you to Congress, John. That's it.
No, but it ought to be, common sense would tell you what's good for the goose would be good for the gander.
Yeah.
But then again, what government ever used common sense?
Well, they have a farmer's market in the middle of the District of Columbia. That's a good first step.
Yeah, and I was really pretty surprised.
Now, do you do other markets here besides this one?
Yeah, we were one of the original vendors at the DuPont Farmers Market on Sunday morning.
Back in the 90s.
Yeah, and my truck has never not missed a Sunday since that market opened. Now, I had a contract one time, I missed a couple of weeks about 10 years ago because I had an overseas contract I had to do. But my truck still went.
Yeah.
My crew still took it.
You didn't make it, but the truck made
Right.
it.
I missed a couple of weeks there.
Well, that's great. Yeah, we've been doing a market in Charlottesville since 1988, I think, or 83. And
well, we started, I started farmers markets, I don't remember. It seems like forever. But we've had roadside market. We've done roadside markets since about 61 or 62. And then this just became kind of an extension of that. And my family's always done peaches and apples, that sort of thing. And then at certain times, it was back the First World War when vegetables were short, they turned the whole farm into vegetable production. And then afterwards they did sheep and lamb and then...
So you've got over half a century of farming going on this piece of land.
Oh, I'm still farming part of the original piece of ground that my great whatever you want grandfather bought before there was ever a West Virginia. When it was still Virginia. It was Jefferson County, Virginia. And someday that makes an interesting story, but it's brothers falling in love with the wrong girls in the same family and splitting the family up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to take us out to the farm and show us this and tell us that story.
Yeah, part. But it's, we've been on it now. When I was growing up, we farmed in peaches and apples and stuff. And then, as a lot of sons and fathers don't always see eye to eye.
Especially when you make them hoe.
Yeah, I spent 25 years working overseas, off and on. So I would go overseas and do a contract, and then I would come back with a pocket full of money and work on the farm. And then when the money ran out, it was time for Sandy to go back to work.
That's a true farmer. Go make some money and then spend it all on the farm until it runs out.
It's that same old thing where they go, if you ever hit the Powerball and you look at them and you go, well, I could probably farm for another 8 or 10 years. So, but then as my parents got older, I took shorter contracts and worked for different outfits. And then when they passed away, I took over the farm. And that's when we really got into doing farmers markets. And because we just, over the years, we've done processing fruit and vegetables. We've done wholesale. We've sold to restaurants. We've sold to grocery stores. And I'm not much interested in doing that anymore. My whole thing is I don't really care. As long as I got enough money at the end of the month to pay my bills, and every once in a while buy a new pair of blue jeans or something, that's about all.
Yeah, we kind of wear them out. Don't we?
I've made money.
Yeah.
I made plenty of money when I worked overseas. And what I do is spend it. There's nothing else you do with money except spend it.
So you're getting a really good interaction with the people and growing
it's the
for
people.
them
It's
and,
the
and
people.
dealing with
It's
them.
why you do it. You don't do, I mean, you like to grow stuff. I like to produce stuff. I get bored sometimes. You know, I could never, we've always gone into the wild, the exotic, the off the wall. I get bored of growing nothing but tomatoes, sweet corn, and green beans. You know, throw some haricot vert in the mix. Have somebody look you dead in the eye and say, okra won't grow in this part of the country. Yeah, watch me. Oh, artichokes won't grow here. Everybody knows that. Well, what do you call them? You know, there were very few people growing eggplant in this part of the country. Everybody told me eggplant was impossible to grow. It's too hard to grow. You can't grow it. I grow 14 different varieties of eggplant. The way we do it, and of course this comes from working overseas and stuff. I spent time in Italy and Spain, and you know, and you just absorb stuff. But you notice that these guys over there, they don't try to fight Mother Nature. They just work around her. Who says the row has to be 3,000 feet and straight as an arrow? You know, if they're 250 feet long and there's a rock break, go around it, stop the rock break. You don't have to plow through it. And then learn to put as much vegetable in that 200 feet as if you had 1,200. That's all. We high density plant, I high density plant just about everything. And people will come out and they'll go, my God, how do you manage to put that many pounds of green beans in a third of an acre? And I go, well, we just kind of stick them in the ground. You know?
They're not one row.
No, my rows aren't 36 inches apart.
Yeah.
My rows are about 3 inches apart, and they're on a bed 36 inches wide, and it's a raised bed. And, you know, we do a lot of things not necessarily because it's good, but because it's expedient. You know, we use black plastic on our raised beds because it keeps the weeds down. If you keep the weeds down, you're not spending money on herbicide. If you're not spraying the herbicide, it's not washing in the creek. You know, it tickles me.
Yeah.
That these guys, you know, and again, I'm not bad-mouthing government or something, but it just seems silly to me that if they offer me money to drill a well or something, and I'm thinking about taking them up on it, and they come in and they say, well, let's do this assessment. And they say, well, we're going to start out with 100 points. I don't know whether you've ever had one of these done or not. We're going to start out with 100 points. Okay. All right, now, let's see here. You're growing grass and stuff in between all your rows of black plastic. Cut down on erosion. That adds 20 points. And they look at you and say, well, you're using black plastic instead of herbicides, protecting the fish and the wildlife. That adds 20 points. And you got all these rock breaks and stuff you can't afford to push out. Makes good deer cover. Can't afford to push out. That's the operative word there. That's worth 20 points. I said, well, where do you give money to the guy to do it? He said, well, for everything you do wrong, we subtract points. And if you get down to around 20 total, we'll probably lend you the money to build us.
So you're too good to get the money.
So it's a case of you go to my neighbor who plows into the creek, got no fences, every spare tree cut to the base, no wildlife cover, and you give him a ton of money. And if that's not rewarding bad behavior, you know.
Right.
But where is the money for the guy who's trying to do good? Who's trying to do it right? Maybe not for the same reasons. You know, to me, I grow grass in my middles. I don't worry so much about erosion. Sure, that's the byproduct. But when my crews are out cutting after a rainstorm, who cuts faster? The guy standing in wet grass, the guy knee-deep in mud? Think about it.
Yeah.
You know? And if they're on nice raised beds, who picks faster? The guy already has the stuff 8 to 10 inches tall, or the guy who's right down on the ground? Think about it. You know, Yeah, it's the byproduct is, hey, you're using this stuff and it's helping the environment and stuff. But there's, for every action there's equal
So
reaction.
it makes sense in both ways.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, now I notice there are a lot of suits around here, and not a lot of us guys in John Deere hats and straw hats. What's the interaction you have with the people here? That they've never seen a farmer before.
Well, a lot of them. Most of the people that are customers here, I think they had a little bit of bad rep the other day after this thing opened. And they were talking about high prices and stuff. And yeah, there are some gourmet items here that are pretty healthy. Let's face it, I'm not going to back off of prices for anybody. There are enough farmers out there going broke feeding people cheap. I don't have to be one of them. But I am morally obligated to feed them the quality and, the highest quality. I'm going to ask for the price, but I'm morally obligated to make sure that they get to use it. Oh, well, some of those would be like the rotational farming, grassland management. We combine some of the older technologies like weed burning to get away from herbicide use to the newer methods of farming like growing on black plastic so that we don't have to use herbicides. We've gotten more and more into high density plantings so that we're actually using less ground but producing more product. It's we've managed to take what we consider the better parts of drip irrigation and combine them with our overhead irrigation. We have traveling hose, but we also use standpipe plus the drip, and we've tried a little bit of hydroponic, but that's a little more than we want to get into management-wise. So actually, we learned about pest control and pest management, but then now we're learning more and more about sustainability. Sometimes less is more, and we're always looking at the bottom line, how to cut back through more management of pests, management of spray materials, and sustainability, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So we do a lot of scouting. If we find a pest that is going to cause us an economic hardship, then we'll kill it. It's just slap out, that's as simple as I can make it. If it's something that might put a small hole in something that the customer will buy and the quality's not affected, then we don't kill it. The object's to get it grown and get it sold before you're going to lose the product. We're not organic. We tried organics for a while, but it's simply we couldn't produce the quality needed for our city markets. So we find that the sustainable practices actually do us a lot more good. We use a lot of compost, but the pure scale. One of the things Rodeo will tell you is normal compost takes about 20 tons to the acre. Well, do the math on 20 tons to the acre to 100 acres of vegetables. That'd be a lot of compost. So we try to do what we can with our compost, some green manures, rotational, and then if we have to use chemical fertilizers, we do. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You got to do something. You can't do anything or do nothing because then it won't grow. So we try to take the best out of everything that we're doing to make it all work. And so far, it's been working pretty good. When we first started out, we got up to 17 markets a week. 3 trucks would leave the farm every day. But they were smaller markets, and the income from them, by the time you did the maintenance, the trucks, the fuel, hire people to run them, worry about people to run them, we finally figured out that we could actually cut down, take our 4 or 5 larger markets, put more product on our trucks, more people to sell it, and that we could actually do better and less thrashing around than doing all the smaller markets. And as the years have gone, as we've gone down through the years, it's allowed us to spend more time on the farm actually growing and learning. We do an awfully lot of experimenting with different things in the greenhouse. There's nothing any better. I like nothing any better than somebody to tell me something won't grow somewhere. Years ago, we got into growing artichokes, and everybody said, oh, artichokes won't grow in West Virginia. Artichokes won't grow. Well, I'm probably one of the larger producers of artichokes on the East Coast, I guess, because I know a lot of people still say they can't grow artichokes. We do a lot of experimenting with greenhouse vegetables. We got into growing vertical. So if you take a greenhouse that's say 30 feet wide and 100 feet long, is 3,000 square feet. If you learn to grow vertical, then every time you do a vertical run, you got 3,000 more square feet. We can actually grow head lettuce 27 heads to the square foot in a greenhouse. And it doesn't have anything to do with hydroponics. It's simply growing in culture, but growing in containers and going up rather than over. When we were first starting that, there were no winter markets. We also produce winter strawberries the same way, growing containers. All our grape tomatoes that we grow for winter production, we only grow grape tomatoes in the winter. I've never been able to grow a full-size slicing tomato in a greenhouse that I would eat. So we grow grape tomatoes for the flavor, and they're all done extremely high densities and containerized growing. The winter markets that we do here in DC, or the area, we do the DuPont Farmers Market on Sunday, and that's open all winter long. And then we also do a Saturday winter market in Falls Church, Virginia, which is just hop, skip, and a jump from here. So we do both of those, and maybe if there's enough interest and enough farmers, someday we might come up with a midweek all winter market. The winter markets do well for us. People still have to eat. Once you get set up and you learn a few basic principles about how to keep stuff from freezing, there's really not a whole lot of difference between doing winter markets and summer markets. The people seem to be a little more appreciative. We also, in conjunction with our winter markets, harvest a lot of stuff and have learned to store it. Our potatoes we dig in the fall and we store in bulk bins in different mediums, and that keeps them from dehydrating and drying out. We do turnips the same way, beets. We also grow beets in the greenhouses, but sometimes you might be in between patches in the greenhouse, and then we have our regular cut stored beets to fall back on, and parsnips, and of course we grow a lot of apples. We store cold storage apples. We decided that we either had to build more greenhouses, hire more people, and produce more of the same thing, or figure out a way to take what we were throwing on a compost pile and turn it into value added. So in the past year, we have built a processing facility on the farm that we now can use a lot of the vegetables that just the quality, it wasn't top price quality. And so now we can use those tomatoes. We use those tomatoes to make our own salsa, our eggplant to make baba ganoush. We do hummus, we do bean hummus, sweet corn salsa. So when we have lots of sweet corn or it comes back from market, We process it, freeze it, so that we can use it in the winter. And so far, that's been very well received.
They're getting something they couldn't get even if they went to the grocery store.
Right.
Because your food hadn't traveled 3,000 miles.
No. And it was made yesterday morning.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you know, people tell me, oh, this stuff is so fresh. I wish I had a garden. You know, in my heart, I want to look at them and go, you couldn't grow it if you had it in the backyard. Because, you know, the second Saturday that there was a ball game on and you wanted to watch,
Yeah.
your garden would be full of weeds.
Right.
So, and are you going to come home tired and go to the garden
Right.
and pick everything for supper?
Right.
No.
Right.
You know, you come home tired, your wife comes home tired, all you want to do is
Take out.
eat it. Yeah, takeout. And
Yeah.
this is
like fresh
natural, fresh product that's takeout.
Yeah.
And
Right at your office.
Yeah. On the way to the metro.
Yeah.
100 feet from the metro.
I said I was waiting to see some wax boxes getting on the metro, a little cart, you know, somebody with several pumpkins.
Now, granted, let's be realistic. You're not going to sell any 25-pound watermelons at this market. You know, they ain't going to haul them on.
No,
But
you have to slice it.
Yeah, probably. But you know, I think it's good. I see the people, you know, coming back. They were a little suspicious to start with, but when they figured out what they get for the amount of money they're paying for it, the personality of the people in the market, I think they come around. I don't think the money bothers them so much. Very seldom do they even bother looking at the
Hey, I
figures
spent more
the
on
scale.
parking than you're selling tomatoes for us.
Yeah.
I got a minute and a half for a nickel.
So
So if I drove across town to buy a tomato, I'd spend
now
$2
you also
a buck.
have to remember that a lot of the growers recognize that we're in a recession, and we made the conscious decision whatever you would call it, last summer, beginning of last summer, that we would reduce our prices. And we did. And, you know, we've sucked it up. And we plan on keeping it reduced. But make no mistake about it, when somebody decrees the recession over,
They're
the
back.
prices will go back up. They have to.
None of your inputs have gone down.
No. You know, my banker doesn't care. You know, the guy who delivers my diesel fuel, he hasn't given me recession pricing. You know, and he's got no intention on doing it either.
Well, Jim, it's been great talking to you.
Good talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Bye
And we
sometime.
should come out to the farm and do a little tour.
Yeah.
You know, the last time I was at the John Deere dealer, I was buying a manure spreader. And he took my money. It was a used one. He took my money and he said, "Now I got to tell you, it's the one piece of equipment John Deere will not stand behind." And I said, "No, why?" He said, "You get covered with manure." Well, there you have it, arugula to zucchini at the White House, Fresh Farm Markets on Meet the Farmer TV. I'm Michael Clark, your host, thanking you for joining us for another episode of Meet the Farmer TV.
This program is a production of Meet the Farmer TV, LLC, in association with Planet Earth Diversified, Nelly Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design.